Well, let's get more details now on the Central African Republic's conflict. We are joined live by CCTV's Jack Button in Brussels and Jane Kiyo in the Central African Republic of capital of Bangui. Jack, I'll start off with you now. The Central African Republic conflict has been brewing for several months now, and the latest incidents have seen the worst violence in a long time. Why did it take such a long time, though, for the European Union to ban arms sales to the country?
Well, EU officials certainly wanted to implement that ban earlier. The problem is here, it is simply the bureaucracy and the way the wheels turn so slowly, because any decision like this needs the agreement of all 28 member states. And that's why we saw this agreement coming out of the Leaders Summit just a few days ago. Now, headlining that summit was talks on rearranging the military arrangements, or cooperation or lack of cooperation amongst EU member states. There was a recognition by many countries that these sorts of bans, and also going beyond that, peacekeeping interventions are moving far too slowly. And there was a push there from Brussels as well as some member states to try and create some agency at a European level where the bloc's militaries or foreign policy strategies could be under that single umbrella, so these sorts of things or these decisions could be enacted much more quickly. But in the end, we saw countries like Britain saying, very strongly it didn't want its troops under the umbrella of the EU, and also other countries saying that it still wanted to retain the rights over those foreign policy decisions. So we just didn't have much progress there, unfortunately. So what we're left with is very much a willingness here in Brussels to move with greater haste, and certainly by some member states, but still with this system in place where it takes time, far too much time, of course, in the eyes of many people.
All right, Jane, you're following that developing crisis there inside the Central African Republic, and we are receiving reports that hundreds of Muslim Seleka supporters protested against the French, though, over allegations of bias. How have the French responded to these accusations by the local residents?
Well, Beatrice, France is yet to make an official statement about this, but we did hear one of the French commanders deny these allegations in one of the local radio stations here. Now, these allegations have also been made by a government official. The Minister for Security is quoted as saying that French troops are actually arming, supporting and siding with the anti-Balaka Christian militia. Now, these allegations are basically one-sided. They're coming from the Muslim side, perhaps sending a strong message, given that the president is Muslim. But the president himself has been appealing to these two sides, the ex-Seleka rebels and the anti-Balaka fighters, to lay down their weapons so that they can talk and try and negotiate and even try and reconcile these two warring communities. But I have to say that, Beatrice, these allegations are also not coming from the ex-Seleka rebel supporters, and Christians and anti-Balaka supporters have also been making similar allegations, but aimed at Chadian troops, whom they accuse of siding with the ex-Seleka rebels. So, Beatrice, at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty in regards to this issue. But yes, like you said, those protests, certainly the biggest show of a significant show of hostility to the French troops who arrived here 3 weeks ago to try and quell this violence. Beatrice.
All right, Jack, let's return to that arms ban, though, briefly now. What is the European Union exactly trying to do to prevent, what are they trying to prevent with this arms ban exactly?
What they're trying to ensure is that weapons or assistance don't flow to anyone except the peacekeepers, the 1,600 French troops, along with the roughly 2,000 African Union soldiers in that country. But it's part of a broader strategy. The EU has just bumped up its humanitarian aid to around 60 million euros, but it's also now providing 50 million euros to those French and African Union forces. And as you mentioned before, Catherine Ashton, the foreign policy chief, is now trying to formulate a stronger response, which she will take to leaders in mid-January, and that may include military intervention. Now, many countries have said they're not going to send soldiers, including Britain, but Poland, Belgium, as well as Estonia have indicated they may send some military assistance, perhaps not in a fighting sense, but that may be enough to please France and the African Union forces there. They've been calling for just some troops at least to secure the airport, so the French soldiers can be freed up to work on disarming those militias, but also humanitarian assistance. They want medics, military medics down there to help in alleviating the suffering of the population. So we're going to be hearing those options in the middle of January. But again, it takes time here. So even if there is agreement on what could be done on perhaps even sending further troops, it's still going to take some time for there to be action.
All right, Jane, we've seen that show of hostility against the French there in the capital, Bangui. So exactly how are the French, though, planning to secure the country if the local residents are against them, so to speak?
Well, Beatrice, so far they seem to be carrying on with the normal operations, the regular patrols and disarmament programs. We actually witnessed one such disarmament exercise going on in the streets of Bangui a short while ago. So while the protests have certainly sent a strong message, I doubt they'll do much in terms of interfering with the French operations in the Central African Republic at the moment. Remember, these are the French troops are actually credited with stabilizing the situation since the latest round of violence broke out 3 weeks ago, and they are basically backing the African Union forces, which are still deploying and which have been struggling to quell the violence. Beatrice?
All right, CCTV's Jen Kiyo joining us there from Bangui, and Jack Button joining us there from Brussels. To you both, thank you.